welcome back to Everyday Struggle. It's our favorite day of the week, Thursday, Friday. Nadeska, Wayno, and Akademiks here.
Good.
How you guys doing?
Morning. What's up, y'all? How you feeling? What's the deal?
Happy that it's actually Friday.
It's not Friday. It's Thursday.
Thursday, Friday.
Thursday and Friday.
Friday.
Thursday
according
and
to
Friday.
Chris.
All right, so we got another great fan question episode. Thanks again, you guys, for submitting all of these questions. But first, just to round out a topic we were talking about yesterday. So we had a fan question about artists and how they sort of mature gracefully. And I believe Ak was saying it has a lot to do with sort of lyricism, fans really connecting with your story. So Offset just did an interview with The Breakfast Club where he actually spoke about why we got such mature content on Father of Four. He sort of predicts that swag rap is on the decline and more content is coming back around. He's also really not feeling the glorification of drugs. Let's check out a clip.
This album got to be different because I'm grown. I mean, I'm doing real grown man things. I can't keep talking about these diamonds and these cars, and I can't, because I go through real life all the time. That's why I was taking my time, pushing back, taking my time, because I wanted to be able to control the content, because I feel like content, music coming back around. All the swag and all that, though, that's finna go out the door. I just feel like in music right now, it's too much drug talking, like using the drugs.
All right, I think Offset's a good case study for this, right? So although you guys weren't super fans of the album, it was definitely more introspective than usual. Here he is actively talking about trying to make a little bit of a change. What do you guys think?
I like this. I mean, of course, I like the album. I said that I thought the album was good. And the reason why I said it was good is because you got a different side of him that you didn't usually expect. I mean, it wasn't the entire album, but I thought it was really, it's really risky to call your album Father of Four with the type of artist he is, like to be vulnerable, to talk about his kids. On this interview, he's also talking about how he wished he had his dad in his life. I think that that's very like big for artists that we try to act, and just as black men, we try to act like we so tough and nothing bothers us. And he's saying it bothers me that I don't have a relationship with my dad. You know what I mean? He's like, yo, I would want him to come around. He's like, I'm rich. So, I mean, it's interesting what he's saying about the drug thing. I don't think it's content, I think it's substance, what he really meant to say. But I think that it kind of changes, like I said, it changes the trajectory of how we view the Migos as a whole. Because to me, he has the best project out the three, and he's saying things that's real to him. So I'm not mad at it, you know?
All right, Ak, what do you think about the evolution of Offset?
Content rapping coming back around. It's always been here. As I said, I've been hammering down the point for like the last week. If you're going to be here for longevity, you're gonna need content. We're gonna get really bored of you rapping the same shit with the same flow and you're talking about nothing. No substance, no content. Over time, we get tired. Honestly, he was the Migo that was primed and ready to actually give content. How much do we really know about Takeoff? How much do we really know about Quavo? Even though we see them from time to time on the blogs, his life, his personal life, we see him having a child, we see there's a lot of moving parts. It was actually the perfect time and probably the perfect storm for him to share his story with people. Could they do that on a group album? I think that'd be very difficult. So him doing it on a solo album, it was perfect. Now, will that affect how future Migos albums will be? I don't know. Like, for example, Culture 3 is coming up. Do I think it's gonna be ultra personal and stuff like that? I'm pretty sure they might do what like if you remember, like, even though clearly that this is a different type of project, like What a Time to Be Alive. Like you had Future had like a song just focused on him. Drake had a song kind of focused on him. Maybe they'll do something like that for Culture 3 where they could get a little bit more personal.
Or do you feel like he could go back and forth, so just keep doing what the Migos do when they're together and give us introspective Offset only in his solo work, or is that too strange?
I feel if you're fitting them all in the puzzle to create Culture like 3, it's hard to kind of like get really deep.
I don't think it would be hard to get deep with all three of them because they share the same story. They're all actually blood relatives, right? On that interview, he talks about them having to share clothes as kids. Like, yo, 1 week I got this set of clothes, next week you got it, next week you got it. So I don't think it would be hard to do. When we look at like the Migos, their most successful song, which is Bad and Bougie, right? Who took the lead on that? Offset, right? So I think that if he takes the lead, of course, I'm not predicting for the Migos to just have all shit that's all serious at all. But if they want to take a turn with their music, I don't think it'll be tough because it seems like as more recently, he takes the lead as to how the direction goes. You know, like right now he's like spearheading. When you seeing him, now it's making you think like, all right, well, not that they got to step their game up, but I am going to look for some different shit for y'all to say now.
To see if he pushes them as a group. It makes me more excited to hear Culture 3.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what they needed because to me, Culture 2 kind of doesn't compare to the first Culture, right? And that's just because I really like the first Culture. But the third one is like, okay, we've gotten, for the past 2 albums, we've gotten like this same type of content from y'all. Where can y'all go now? And again, they're gonna have their fucking fight nights and their Bad and Bougies, those big records.
And we still want those from
them. We want,
too.
absolutely. I don't want them to just be all totally conscious all the time. But I would look to them to do other things, or talk about other things that's personal to them. Quavo is another one. He has a relationship. You can see his relationship with Sweetie, right? Like they out there together. Probably we haven't seen no bullshit come from them, but I'm pretty sure he could touch on a few things. So I believe that they could do it all together.
All right.
I think that would be a challenge. I think, again, Offset was in a perfect time. If they did, and to hear the story of Takeoff and Quavo a little bit more on a Culture 3 album, again, I just think that would be a tremendous challenge. But shit, that would change how I view the trajectory of the group.
Their whole career has been a challenge. I mean, people wrote them off the first time they heard Bando. People said that they wouldn't be here before Versace came, and then after that with Fight Night, and then, like they've continuously recreated themselves over the past 4 or 5 years, where everybody was like, oh, they're gonna be gone in a year or two. So it's a challenge, but they've shown that they up for challenges.
But there's no indication that they're doing that though.
Nah, we all speculating, but I don't think that it's impossible.
But it's like Wayno says, like if Offset's in that pocket and they're recording this project together, he could push them a little bit in that direction if they're willing. But we'll see. Any predictions or any inside info on when this album might actually come? How soon? Now that the Offset album's out?
That shit might come out next week. Like the hell. But I really don't know. I have no idea.
Okay.
But I think this next project will probably show where the group trajectory is, as opposed to like, you know, I would like to hear a updated Offset album in a year or two.
We're still waiting for your rebrand, the mature, as you say, rebrand. But we'll
Coffee
see.
Academic.
I'm mature today.
All right, so before we get to fan questions, we want to do our fast break segment this week. So this is where we highlight artists that we really think are about to blow. And this week's fast break artist is DaBaby, formerly known as Baby Jesus. So he's a 27-year-old rapper from Charlotte who's been making waves for his music and also because of his very hilarious visuals. Last month, it was reported that he officially signed a joint venture with Interscope and his indie label South Coast Music Group. He's had a couple big records like Walker, Texas Ranger, Blank Blank, Gorilla Glue, and he has another project dropping tomorrow, March 1st. What do you guys love about this kid?
Oh, Baby, what originally got me into, well, just paying attention to him was I seen a video clip where he was shooting a video and like some guys tried to press him as to why he was there. And he basically told them like, yo, if y'all would have came and hollered at me as men, we could have had a conversation, but y'all not about to like stun on me just because I'm here. And then they was just, and I don't know tough guy shit. When I seen that, I saw a person who stands on their own too. Now, once I started listening, I haven't listened to his whole catalog. I think I listened to the more recent ones.
Yeah, he has a few tapes out.
Yeah, he has a few tapes, but what I like about him is that he has a ton of personality. What a lot of people don't know is that he was signed by 2 women who came into Interscope, which Nicole Wiscarsko and my girl Baroline. So that's dope that it took two ladies in the game, you know what I mean, to show him that love. But once he hit the ground kind of running, he hasn't stopped. Like I was in Charlotte, you know, he was at the Dreamville brunch as well. Like he's been making his rounds, and he has some good music. And he also has the kid Stunner for Vegas or whatever.
He works hard. He dropped 2 projects last year.
Dropped 2 projects. I just look at it as a different side of North Carolina, because you know you got your J. Cole, but now you got Baby, and I think like with him, he's coming from Charlotte, he's gonna be able to shine a whole new light on that region, you know, because up here he got people fucking with him in New York, you know, and that's big.
One thing that kind of bled through to me is just authenticity. Like you could tell when someone's being authentic. It felt organic, and a lot of times, like you'll have the persona, but it doesn't match the music. He's making some really good music.
Yeah.
So again, I think he's just hitting that stride where everything is connecting. I'm just hoping and praying that nothing like bad happens. You get me? Because because that's usually such a sweet spot where like we like when rappers are keeping it that way, but it could really go either way sometimes as they're coming up. So that's what really struck me. But I've been listening to all this stuff. Like, shoot, I add him to my Cloud Token playlist.
Which one of your favorite joints? I fuck with Millie. Millie is my favorite record from him.
Hold on, I follow Cloud Tokens. Let's see.
I think it's a Blank Blank joint up there right now. Either that or Walker Texas Ranger.
Yeah.
You have Walker Texas Ranger on Cloud Tokens.
What's really dope about him is that like he has like a very funny personality. Like for all the seriousness and all the realness that you respect him for, he also is a jokester. Like for real, this dude is a jokester, and I think that he has like a perfect balance of our artists of today.
That's very rare.
Yeah, it's very rare. It's very rare. He has a lot of personality, and he has a tour coming up. I'm hearing is rumors that he might have worked with Offset on some stuff as well. So I think that because he's new energy, I've seen like Meek support him, a lot of different people. I think because he has a new energy, everybody's paying attention as to what he does. Now with this opportunity, with Interscope and all that, we could see what's gonna happen.
All right, and it's great timing since the project drops tomorrow, so when we're back here Monday, we could hear your thoughts on it. Hopefully you're more impressed than like all of the recent albums we've reviewed, which have gotten very lukewarm reviews.
Yeah, I like Baby though.
So before we get to the fan questions, because this one is actually related to one of the first ones we get, just real quick. So earlier this week, it was announced that De La Soul were going to put their first 6 albums on all major streaming platforms, which is big. But now we're hearing that the group is only going to receive 10% of the profits, with the other 90% going to their former label, Tommy Boy. Now, we always talk about this in context of new and upcoming artists and all the things they do for attention, but we could see that legacy acts deal with this as well. So they shared on social media saying, you know, after 30 long years of good music and paying their debt to hip-hop, De La Soul unfortunately will not taste the fruit of their labor. So they called out the label in a series of tweets, and they got a lot of support. And apparently Jay-Z and Tidal are not going to stream this project until they resolve this issue, which is really great.
Yeah.
So just keep this in mind as we start. I want to toss it to our correspondent.
What's up, Everyday Struggle? It's your favorite correspondent, Southside Chief, and my struggle exchange question is, today in hip-hop, do you believe that artists have to live strictly off of their streams to make it? When I say that, I mean their music, or do you think that they have to do antics in their music videos, put fake streams on their music and fake views on their YouTube videos, and do all these antics to make it seem like they're bigger than what they are? Can they make it strictly off of their music, or do they have to do all these other things to make it seem like the perception is the reality?
You guys didn't even know I hired an official correspondent, did you? Yo.
Well, niggas got the transition.
He's amazing. Yo, the transition killed me. That killed me.
You can come work for the art department over here in Complex, bro.
But yeah, sorry, just back to this conversation about like streaming.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, like, you know, it's ill. I mean, right now we talking about De La Soul, who was like one of the top groups when I was growing up as a kid. And then we talking about in the same, you know, on the same show, we're talking about Migos as well. And I think this is why a lot of the older guys just look for respect sometimes, because they took a lot of arrows for a lot of artists to be able to do what they're doing today. I think in business, you know, it's always great to get, people try to get a 400% increasement on whatever the investment is, which is cool, but right is right and wrong is wrong. Like, you know that these guys did a lot of work. You know at the time of music, how bad these deals were. And now look at this, like in the end game, when people sign deals, they not thinking about 20 years later.
Right.
They're like, oh nah, what, 150,000, a million?
Especially at that time, how could you have even begin to predict that the landscape would look like this?
Right. So I think it's very unfair. Specifically speaking about De La Soul situation, I think it's unfair. But to the dude's question about do artists have to live strictly off their streaming, I think that streaming now, I mean, that is a big portion of your income. But you should look for ancillary income that's aside from just your music if you want to have a career. He said fake views and all of that. Fake views do not equate to real engagement. So you can have 30 million views, but it, like Ak always says, our friend Russ would like to say, when you go to a show and it's only 200 people in a 1,500 seat room, you know, you see the truth. So
yeah,
I don't think that you should do those things to get on, but perception is definitely reality.
But sometimes you can see where artists could do it. So numbers, man, if De La is struggling with a 90-10 split, which is outrageous, what's like a current artist dealing with?
Well, first of all, I do want to say, streaming does encourage artists to do fuckery. Like, whether we want to admit it or not, like when we talk about an artist negatively or positively, we usually then see that one tweet that, yo, this person's music is being streamed this amount of percentage more because they're now in the news. So that does encourage an artist to want to control the headlines, because intuitively people who find out about you realize you're a musician or be like, oh shit, damn, Soulja Boy, okay, let's go like stream his music again. So it encourages people to want to dominate the headlines. Unfortunately, it's going to be a lot of goofy shit. It's sad what's happening to De La Soul, and I, you know, I can't imagine how the label really wants to rip them off like that. I got to believe, and again, it's just my belief, that this is some old antiquated contracts that have old antiquated language where streaming possibly wasn't, you know, like 10 years back, streaming wasn't that big of the pie.
This is in the 80s, 90s.
Right?
You know what I mean?
So the label was taking the majority of that, and to be honest, when you looked at the bottom line, year in and year out, you probably didn't see much that coming from streaming. Now, things has changed, right? So now it's a huge deal. Out of good faith, and of course for legacy acts like that, you have to renegotiate.
Yeah.
And the mere fact, I'm saddened that it had to be on social media, because they're not only people with those type of contracts where it's like 90-10, might even be 95-5, right? The fact that they had to go to social media probably shows some type of pushback, either to negotiate or maybe like just still not offering fair terms. I think that's sad. But the current artists now, like, unless you're an idiot or you don't have a lawyer, nobody's signing for that.
Well, I mean,
right? Like a royalty split on streaming where like you're getting.
Would you really be surprised though? There are some artists who still don't know their label situations.
No, but I'll say this: I do know for some artists it's not that much better in terms of just royalty splits in general. You get me? Well, not 90-10. But I know people who are big artists who got 70-30, 80-20. It's not that.
I'd be real curious to see what like an artist like a Lil Pump has gotten, only because he signed a big deal, right? So the thing is that when you sign for a lot of money, like heavy on the cash up front, you have to bend in order to get things for that. So it's like, all right, I want $1 million or I want $10 million, and they're like, all right, we give you a $10 million deal or $8 million deal, but on the back end, there's gonna be things that's unfavorable because you wanted that money up front.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, and I still do contracts. It's the first deal they give you, you never sign. Like the first deal is to let you know what I'm thinking, right? To see if you know anything, and then if you don't, you sign it. If you do, then you have your people look at it, and we have a negotiation. But they definitely still give out bad deals. You know?
Absolutely. That's good advice. Never sign the first deal.
Oh, no, don't ever
They're always
sign
trying
the
to
first
fuck with
deal.
you with the first deal. Don't you ever. And then if they're trying to sell you way too hard on the vision and the future, then you know they're really trying to scam you.
Oh, that's cool, but like one of my homies always told me, black and white, when you're dealing with contracts, black and white shows you what a person thinks of you. So as soon as they present you with that, you like, you might look at it like, oh shit. And then when you go back and say, well, I'm thinking this, and they be like, nah, I'm gonna stick to this. That tells you everything. I don't give a fuck how much they say you on vision. Yo, we are dope. You're this, you're that, and the third, you're the future. If you can't move on this black and white, no.
Amen.
Yeah, and as long as there's a label that controls like the rights to your music and they're putting it out there, they're gonna make a significant bigger portion of the profit to your music than you. That you just gotta admit that. Yeah. That's why even I was having a conversation with Lil Reese, who was signed to Def Jam previously, and he said, you know, like if you ask the average fan, they'd be like, that nigga fell off, man. Like, you know, they're not seeing the visibility because he's not on the label. Like he admitted to me, he said, yo, my first year being independent, I made more money than I made all the years that I was on a label through music. You get me? So again, when you making 100% of your shit, it's way better than you making 20% or whatever else the percentage is that you have with that label. That's why most of these artists are still on the road. Like, you know, like you look at like the money that's coming from music as some shit that you'll get later down the line or something like that, but that's not some shit you're dependent on.
But the thing about it is like signing a deal is no different than any other deal. You got to approach signing a record deal like you would approach buying a house. That's why when you have a landlord and you sign a lease, they can say, well, I don't want you having a dog. I don't want you playing loud music. If you want to live in somebody's house, you got to abide by their rules. So when you sign a deal, you're going to have to bend on certain things, but unless you have a direction and a plan and a great team in place, it's not built for you, you know?
Well, speaking of deals, this actually takes us perfectly into our next fan question. So, Can issues with a record label ruin a career as far as being an up-and-coming artist? I've noticed that people like Ace Hood and Rich Homie Quan, who both had outstanding runs when they came out, both had label issues, and when they came back, they didn't make a splash in the industry that their core fan bases would expect. We know that a lot of artists go through this. Some of them come out well on the other side. They sign other deals. They go independent. But it's not always easy. What happens in that period? If you're struggling with the label, they're sort of shelving you. Like, what's that like behind the scenes for the artists?
I mean, it's a lot of different facets to it. There's a lot of different ways. I mean, when you just giving the examples like a Rich Homie Quan and an Ace Hood, like a lot of these kids be fresh off the block, and they're not ready for a lot of like the stardom or the fame that comes with this. So that's why you get artists who don't really know how to conduct themselves in interviews, because they might be talented, but they don't know how to speak. So this shit is a real profession. Now, when it comes to the label, when people usually have backlash, it's like this. Like if me and you fall out and I start talking shit about you, we could be cool again, but we probably not gonna be cool how we once were, because you can't recreate that energy unless we really dig deep into to do it. You can't recreate that energy. So when you start displaying what you don't like, they'll be like, all right, fuck it. These labels don't need you. They're Fortune 500 companies. They can take $30 million losses and not blink. If you're not feeling them, somebody else is still going to sign to them. So
yeah. So with Rich Homie specifically, because I was such a big fan when him and Thug were working together, that was so great. It's kind of sad how things worked out for him. But when we spoke to him on the show, right, Ak, he said like he had a ton of songs that he leaked or couldn't get access to. It sounds like things got very messy there. So he did put out a project after that, but yeah, the reception wasn't there. Like fans weren't paying attention as much as they were before.
Well, you know, he had the whole drama with I think it's the Game Entertainment, which he released. He released the My Nigga record. He had, I can't remember the other record, but he had a couple records that were blowing up. And he had the Flex record. And then what happened is that because he claimed that the CEO was pretty much using all his profits and like funding his own lifestyle, this and third. But then while they were going through some contract dispute, and this is, I think this even happened to Waka too, right? When you're going through that, like you can't release music. Like if you're claiming you're not getting paid, you're going through some litigation to either get out of contract or rectify some shit. You can't just keep dropping music. The fans don't give a fuck about it.
And not even like mixtapes, not even like random singles. Obviously not official project, but you can't drop anything.
Well, you can, right? You can, but like you're dropping at a loss. And what are you dropping it for? You get me? Now, I think, you know, when Rich Homie Quan was talking to us, he was basically saying, yo, he was not trying to drop music because he was going through that process, but the fans, we don't understand that.
They just think that you're absent.
You look at it like, yo, this nigga just fell all the way off, and then when you do get your shit right, you come back around, people are like, yo, we don't hear you. You've been out of here for too long. So I think that's a fine line when you're dealing with that type of situation. Unfortunately for Rich Homie, it just never was the same. We try to heat it back up. I still think he's tremendously talented, but it goes to show that when you have your time, again, whether you're going through contract situations, you got to keep putting out music.
And I mean, another thing that kind of, like the affiliation thing. So it's like when he had the whole thing with him and Thug, like think about how in terms of a lot of Atlanta artists are now, right? Like how Baby and Gunna are now, that was Thug and Rich Homie. So when he kind of had the fallout with him, we didn't hear any more music together.
Right.
Thug still kept on doing what he was doing.
Right.
Yeah, it was like you said, you can't just be putting music out, but it all goes back to having like some sort of direction. And a lot of times you can't look at the label as being solely responsible, and I don't even work for a label, but I'm just saying it's a two-way street. A lot of times why artists don't work is because, and this is not Rich Homie Quan, I don't know his specific situation, but there's artists that make records and don't want to promote their music. You know what I mean? There's tons of artists who spend time in the studio, make music, they don't want to shoot videos, they don't want to do interviews, they don't want to go to radio, so how can you reach another level if you're not willing to do all the other things that come with it?
That's true, and there's so many different examples of this, like Big Sean. He had good momentum, he signed to Good, and it took a long time before we could officially get an album. It's not like he was like trapped necessarily, but he was also still releasing mixtapes. So I guess you just got to push through and drop music regardless, even if you're dropping at a loss, like you said?
Well, you also got to realize Rich Homie Quan, who, again, he was with Thug at a period of time and they were recording at a very fast pace. Remember, he said that, yo, a studio leaked like 200 of the songs because Birdman ain't paid, right? When, again, your label ain't really, like, if they're not getting paid for studio time and second, third, they either held records or saying, fuck it, if we're not getting paid, we'll put out all your records. But even beyond that, going on to Ace Hood, I do believe, you know, Ace Hood through We the Best and what's the parent group that We the Best is on there?
They're under Epic now, but they were under a different label at the time, I believe. But they're under Epic now.
Yeah, like I honestly felt he had some momentum, and then I don't know, like I've always used him and Khaled kind of as an example of like how I see artists with Ross, and I feel like Khaled at some point decided that he was probably the biggest artist on the label, which he is, and focused on himself more than those artists. And I think you hear Ace Hood kind of vent about that in the later music he put out. I'm not too sure about his situation now, but whatever that was, and we heard other people try to call out Khaled for that as well. But you know, Khaled's friends with a lot of people. I think that screwed Ace Hood a lot.
But he hasn't stopped though, because he still has music coming this week.
Right, but
yeah, but it set him back.
Yeah.
It set him back.
The thing about that also
Perception's a huge thing.
Maybe you know, a lot of things are given to these artists as well. I don't want to, you know, I don't know Ace Hood's specific situation, but a Khaled trying to make himself into the guy could be after I've given Ace Hood a bunch of records and some records worked, some records didn't. Now Ace Hood immediately, because he's tied to Khaled, as soon as you sign to We the Best, you're around a bunch of artists that you probably wouldn't be around if you were working independently. So a lot of these artists can't depend solely on whoever their CEO is or the label. You got to get out and work your own shit as well. Like, you should be traveling around and making your own moves. So like, don't be dependent upon who you just signed to. Like, if you signed to MMG, like, even though Meek signed to MMG, he went out there and still was working on all his own shit and was moving around and building up his respect. He didn't solely rely on Ross for that. Where you see certain artists that, all right, I got the Ross feature, I got the Ross vid, maybe I'm out of here now. Doesn't work like that.
But it's always that limbo phase you get into. For whatever reason, Ace would realize it's not gonna work out with Khaled and We the Best. Yeah. Now he then started publicly advocating, I want to get out of here. And during that period, we of course got a couple of records where he was talking about it, but where does your career stand in a period where you're trying to get off a label? The label really is probably saying, nigga, we invested in you. We have no reason to let you go.
There's nothing
right
short
now,
about the legal process. Even if they like agreed it could take a while to negotiate out of that deal too.
Exactly. So now your whole music career is kind of dependent on that process being quick, and also you still putting out records that people are gonna like, and also you're probably doing it with little or no backing during that period.
Yeah.
So if you come out through that and you have any type of buzz, that's like a miracle in itself.
Yeah, I think you just can't be bitter in a situation. Like, if there is some sort of situation where it's between two people, like, you can't specifically put that in your music to highlight it. Like, just make some hits.
That's the thing, that's the last piece of the puzzle, right? We forget that everyone is human.
Absolutely.
So it's like easy for us to sit out here and say, but when it's like your career on the line, you could be depressed, pissed, like all of that is gonna be hard to like deal with all those emotions, plus the legal shit, plus put out music that feels great and inspire. It's just like a tough situation at the end.
It is, but you just gotta work through it. I think, like, you know, when you have these situations, in every career, it's not just the music industry. People always say, oh, how cutthroat. I'm pretty sure fucking fast food is cutthroat as well. Like, you know what I mean? Like, seriously, I'm pretty sure that they have their ups and downs, but the thing is that you have to work through the tough times. It's not about the situations. This world is built off of balance. It's gonna be good, it's gonna be bad, hot and cold, left and right, but it's about how you handle it. Now, perception. Somebody's gonna be like, well, he's doing good, so you just seem like a disgruntled employee, right? As opposed to, all right, let me just work through this shit. Let me, if I'm as good as I believe I am, let me make these records and this, that, and the third, and something I'll touch on, you know. But I've never seen it work when people just try to go totally against the establishment they were with.
It's true.
Yeah, I just think it's difficult, like, because there's so many examples you can name, like, like, for example, think about Skipper the Flipper used to have a decent buzz. Of course, now recently he's been saying, y'all want to get off of QC. Again, there's contracts in place, so
he's not off. I thought he was off of QC.
Well, in the last 3 months, he said, yo, let me out the contract still.
Yeah.
But during that period where the label is probably saying, you're blasting us publicly, we ain't got no, like, we don't need to let you go. And also you're trying to still stay hot. Like, remember Waka with Atlantic, he was going at Atlantic like, yo, they won't let me drop my album they won't let me out the contract. It's hard to maintain a buzz during that time, and I think a lot of careers just suffer.
It's true. So it's nice to see some upcoming artists who come up with an indie label, figure out the right joint deal for them. So hopefully they avoid situations like this moving forward. But thank you for the great question. We really appreciate it. Let's get into this next one. This might be a little bit shorter. So I believe this is also piggybacking off the conversations we've been having about sort of brands like Gucci and Prada and Burberry doing some really suspect shit. Do you think if hip hop supported its own brands like they do designer brands, we would be bigger than those designer brands?
I don't own brands. Like
so it's like, you know, a black person makes a very cool designer brand, and every rapper only talks about wearing that brand they put in their songs and their videos the way they would do Gucci or
Saint Laurent or something. Hip hop did
like Off-White.
Nah, I mean I'm talking about way back. I'm talking about like when Russell Simmons started Fat Farm, a lot of artists that were signed to Def Jam supported that brand. That brand blew up really big.
Rockaware and all those brands.
Yeah, Rockaware. A lot of people supported that brand. Like when Jay-Z's, when Rockaware first started taking off, the Dynasty cover he has on a Rockaware chain. Like that was a big album. So I think they would, but the thing is with people is, and I say hip hop, black people, we be feeling like, man, I'm not gonna keep giving these niggas my money. Like we always have that bullshit in us. Like first we saying, oh, we should support black businesses, we should put this, we should do this, and then as soon as they start making money and they take off and they're doing amazing things, they're like, man, I'm not gonna keep giving them niggas my money.
Just being petty. But so like when we were younger, like in high school and stuff, like I had all those Rockaware shirts. We supported all those brands, Sean John, but at a certain point they just weren't as cool. So is it also on the brands to make it feel a little bit more higher end or change the design? Because people did rock all those. I bought all of them. Absolutely.
I think with a lot of the brands, what happened was the integrity. It's almost like a brand going, like a artist going mainstream. So when a brand gets to a certain level and they're like, all right, we want to start expanding and getting higher distribution, they put it in Macy's, people be like, man, I'm not wearing that shit no more. Because now it's like a mainstream thing that, in hip hop, we feel like personal to certain shit. So once it reaches a certain level, it's like, nah, I'm not feeling it no more because it's accessible to everybody.
What if they skipped a level? Because we also really like aspirational brands, right? Shit that we just really shouldn't be spending our rent money on. So what if they skipped Macy's and went straight to like sex? Then would that be different?
I still feel like like this, like depending on who's attached to it, they're gonna personalize it, right? So of course, like when you look at something like a Yeezy, right? Like Yeezy, not just the sneaker, but the clothing and shit. It's hoodies, but people would be like, man, I'm not giving Adidas is selling it.
Yo, you know what? It was Kanye in the $100 hip hop plain white T-shirt.
Yeah, but it was like, that was with a I forgot the name of that company, but it wasn't just his T-shirt. It was like this high-end company that he collaborated with. But the thing is like that's the thing. There's not a face to Gucci. There's not a face to Louis Vuitton specifically. Like you don't think of a CEO when you think of them. When people think Off-White, they think Virgil immediately, right? When people think Yeezy, they don't think about Adidas, they think about Kanye West. So they personalize it to him. I'm not gonna give him my money, but they'll give it to anybody fucking else that they can't see, touch, or feel. You know?
Interesting.
I do believe you have a point with the once these companies started to get like more mainstream distribution, like yeah, they're gonna be in all Macy's, became a little less cooler for the culture, so people kind of fell back off of it. But also, I do believe, just like judging from the brands that you mentioned, the Rockawares, I mean, even Sean John, even like G-Unit Clothing, like there's been a lot of like, let's just say fashion brands that kind of originated from hip hop and hip hop influence that were supported. But I believe those were too movement and persona dependent, where like that shit will change in a couple of years. Like again,
so when Rockefeller was killing everything, of course
everybody wore that shit without
right?
blinking. But
and I think that's probably one of the challenges of everybody who has or who's developing a brand that they want to be bigger than themselves or be a standalone brand that doesn't depend on you. You get me? So like you got to get that brand to be something that whether you're popping or not, that thing is still in.
Right.
You get me? And I mean, I think eventually we'll probably get there. There is a crab in a barrel mentality where people look at it and be like, yo, that nigga doing that, I could do it too. Or, you know, I mean, to quote my friend Soja, even though he is a scammer, yeah, you'll go throw your money at Apple and all these other people, but you always kind of look over at somebody else. Like, I always say, like, if someone says they have no money and they're trying to sell a product, I'm like, I ain't giving this broke ass nigga my money,
Word.
right? But if somebody got the bread, the richest, like Steve Jobs or like Bill Gates, it's like, yo, you just make it rain up in a window store. You get me? But
and that's more internal issues with our people. But that's another conversation.
So with all of that, like you do have you have those challenges, but as long as hip hop still controls the cool and could move those dollars in terms of making whatever the popular thing at the time, and also making whatever the fashion trend, it can and will probably happen. It's just, I'm telling you, man, the Gucci's and the Gucci's, the Fendi's, these high-end European designers, it still sets the benchmark of what like niggas just like.
That's true. You guys make good points about it being sort of movement based and when people are hot. But what about Virgil? He's come such a long way, and he's at Louis Vuitton now, right? After Off-White and stuff like that. What if he eventually had his own brand separate of all of those? Like, do you guys feel like someone like a Virgil is a person who could grow like a heritage brand for our culture without it being like it dying out in 5 years because he's not obviously ever dropping music or something?
Yes, and well, I don't know what his dealings with is Off-White, if it's personally his, or like how much he owns of it, but yeah, I believe that he could do that. You know what? Another good point is when these brands go to Macy's and all of that, the people who are initially involved, they lose a lot of creative control. So a lot of shit becomes corny. Like they start designing shit because they're trying to sell it to mainstream America.
Yeah.
And a lot of shit that works specifically for hip hop that we're into, and what they're thinking, in order for us to sell it somewhere else, it has to be like this.
You feel like we gotta skip the fast fashion aspect of it though, right?
Yeah.
So there's that like brands that like mass produce clothing for super cheap, and then there's the more premium brands, right? I feel like you would need to skip that middle part.
But you also gotta think about it too, like the niggas who be loving, well shit, I love Off-White because I bought it. It was mad expensive.
You own like one sweater.
I own like 3 things. That was like $5,000. I need a refund. Anyway, but like,
see?
Nah, think about it though. The people who love like Yeezys and Off-White, a lot of the reason why they love it is like the exclusivity of it.
Right.
And to be honest, if you're thinking about growing a company, it's only so long you could just be like, we're only releasing 200 pairs.
No, that's not true though. It doesn't have to be 200, but it doesn't have to be like H&M, Macy's level mass production. There's another tier to it.
If there was a black face attached, not black face specifically, but a black person attached to Supreme, that shit would not have lasted as long as it has. On some G shit, like Supreme.
Or face in general, because I don't know no faces who attached.
No, if there was a black person attached to Supreme as the head person of Supreme, that shit would not have lasted as long as it did. And I tell you why, is because it's this thing in us where we feel like I'm giving him too much bread. Like they personalize this shit. Wow. I'm giving him too much bread. Now, Supreme, they've built off of exclusivity, but they've also like they've showed that you could sell any fucking thing. Yo, you could make this shit Supreme, put it out 10 of them shits.
But also, yeah, limited quantities are not doing a Macy's drop. They make you line up down the block.
Still like at the level like it was a couple of years ago? I
yes,
feel like
it is.
Changed.
No, it still is. Like I was having this discussion on Twitter because like I was saying like it's certain shirts that come with a simple screen print on it, and they'll charge you $385 for a fucking T-shirt with a screen print, right? And then a person said, well, Supreme does the same thing. No, the people who resell it, because Supreme sells for a very, very low, like their retail is nothing. It's just hard to get. So a box logo hoodie is only $150. That's not no money for no hoodie, but it resells for $1,100, $1,500.
That's why I was.
So that's the inflation market.
I wonder about their business model though.
Yeah, I don't know that.
Like,
they like
if the bulk of the money is in reselling, and the company that make the product isn't really invested in
they probably reselling their own shit anyway, right?
But I think that's why I'm always like a little tripped out on exclusivity to that extent, where like the resale is where the money, where the bread is coming in. And like, for example, apparently when Yeezys come out in limited quantity, they sell them shit for like $200. But then you see it online for $2,000. You get me? So I then wonder, how does a company take advantage of that? Because again, are you just putting shit out for the resellers?
But it makes people desperate to get their hands on it, right?
I mean,
and so having people that thirsty to like keep coming back over like years, decades. I'm sure they still make good profit on what they actually sell. They're not gonna like undersell themselves.
Whatever they're selling, I mean, they're not just releasing that. There's a lot of things that
they
cover
do collaborations.
Costs. Yeah, they do collaborations.
Like do a lot, you know.
There's a lot of things that cover costs for them to make their bread. But I mean, I think that, and I read a book one time, and it said like when it comes to branding, in order to have a successful brand, you have to create a category, right? And a lot of these brands, they don't create categories within their brand. So nobody wants anything that everybody can have. Yep. But at the same time, it's like when it comes to like these brands specifically in hip hop, like you said, perception changes. Like the artists that may not be, first of all, a lot of these artists, they not even clothing people. They just jump into fashion because they got the bread to do it. And then once they make enough money, they don't really give a fuck about it. So once you don't give a fuck about it, you pass it along to somebody else. If they don't care nothing about hip hop culture, nothing, you think that they doing what's in the best interest of hip hop culture? Hell no, they're gonna do what sells. So I think it's a lot of different ways to slice it, but ultimately we got to stop thinking that a price point makes you dope. I could buy a fucking $10 shirt or a $15 hoodie and be just as dope as somebody in a $1,000 hoodie.
Well, so I guess to answer the question, because the original question again was, do you think if hip-hop supported its own brands like they do designers, we could be bigger? I think the answer is yes, but it's a big if. There's a lot of ifs that go into getting to that point, unfortunately.
It's gonna be hard to sell. It's gonna be hard for somebody in hip-hop to sell fucking a $3,000 bag, for real. Because they're gonna be like, why are you charging that much?
I think Virgil could do this.
I mean, he's done it already.
Let's give him some time at Louis Vuitton. If he could start even another label that could like rival Gucci or something. Anyway, we have come to the end of our show today, sadly, but as always, we really appreciate you guys sending us these great fan questions. Keep sending them on Twitter at everydaystruggle2gs. Gentlemen, any last thoughts before we leave on this beautiful Thursday, Friday?
Stay your ass in the house because it's cold as shit outside.
Yep.
That's it.
Ak, you could go back to sleep in a second. Yeah. Say something to the people.
Yo, you sounded like a banshee this morning. I walked in, I just heard
he was snoring in there?
Yeah.
Oh, it was funny snoring.
Oh my God, I can't even sit in there. As soon as I walked in the door,
right, you were in the control room.
Yeah, I was in the control room.
Yeah.
What the fuck is that sound?
Okay.
I'm gonna be having the lights off in there from now.
I heard this nigga from the end of the hallway. It was wild.
Sade. Okay.
Playing Sade?
Yeah, I hear me playing Sade.
What's
Lights
your favorite
off.
Sade song? Don't say Sweetest Taboo.
Okay.
Exactly.
And I'm gonna get you guys some new lotion this weekend because you finished all of mine on set.
Right.
Ashy asses. All right, guys, have an amazing weekend. We'll see you Monday on Everyday Struggle.
Peace.